Kia ora koutou, no mai, haere mai. Welcome to lesson 0 for this course. I will try and keep this relatively short, this video. It is essentially just a recap of everything on the stream site. So hopefully if you've been looking around, there won't be much in the way of new information here. If you've already done a personalized course plan, if you've already submitted the tutorial poll, if you've done all of that, then there's not a lot more that you're going to get out of this. Feel free to watch it anyway, but this is intended for those who haven't yet read through the stream site to hopefully give you a bit of a boost, a bit more information in terms of how that course admin is going to be handled. So as usual for my lecture videos, this one is just going to be a PowerPoint slideshow, which I share through here, so I will remain in a little video up in the corner, and the focus will be on the lecture slides. So lesson 0, recap of course admin. There are a few learning outcomes. I've included these here just to keep it consistent with my other lectures, which always start with learning outcomes and end with a review, a list of all the things that have been covered. But obviously, in this case, the learning outcomes are just the course admin. So I've divided it into separate parts. Again, this is something I'll do in some lectures. If there's sort of cohesive blocks of information, I'll separate it into separate parts. Sometimes the lecture will just be one continuous part. It won't be broken down. This part is course structure. So how's the course running? There are 36 lessons, excluding this lesson 0. So there are 36 after this one. They are divided into 9 sections. Each section has either 3 or 6 lessons. And you will need to work through all 36 lessons in order. So in the order that I've provided them, that's because some of the lessons draw on information in the previous ones. And if you skip over some lessons, the ones later on might not make sense. So I do recommend working through them all in order to aid your understanding. In order to get through the whole course over the summer semester, you will need to do approximately 4 lessons per week. That is excluding the shutdown period where Massey closes over the Christmas, New Year week and a half, I think it is. So excluding that, you need to do around about 4 lessons every week, and then there are assessments on top of that. I run this course entirely. I said this, I believe, in the welcome video. So I teach this course. I'm the only face you'll see in the person you'll contact. My contact details are all on stream, so do check those out if you need to get in touch with me. Once a week, I will hold a Zoom tutorial. This will be at a time and day each week that is determined by the tutorial poll on stream. If you haven't answered that, please go and do so. The sooner you all get through answering that, then the sooner I can set that tutorial time and get those underway. They'll be approximately an hour long, but if we're having a good discussion, I'm not going to cut it short and kick everyone out, but I will be there for around about an hour. So even if you don't sign in at the start and it's halfway through or 40 minutes through the 1 hour scheduled block, you can still jump in and ask me some questions. Because it's a distance course, we don't have a physical classroom, we don't get to have any face-to-face discussions, so the stream forums are an attempt to replace those. Please do engage on the stream forums. It's how we're going to get any back and forth, any discussion. It's a great place if you're not sure of a concept to just start talking about it, to get other people's views on it, to pose some questions, anything that you've been thinking about, go and chuck them in the forums and see if we can get some discussions going. The textbook is recommended, it is not required, but it is useful. It goes into a bit more detail in some areas than I do, just because I'm limited by making lessons that fit the course schedule. The textbook obviously is not restricted in the same way. On the other hand, there are some sections where I provide a bit more info than the textbook does, or indeed slightly different definitions and things. I will make sure to point those out when they are valid. There are 4 assessment components, so on top of the 36 lessons, on top of the tutorials, on top of the problem sheets which accompany each lesson, there are assessments. They are 6 assignments, altogether worth 25% of your grade, 6 lab reports. The first lab report, which is actually experiment 0, is sort of an introductory one, and it's not worth anything towards your final grade, but it is compulsory because it introduces you to the skills that you'll need to complete the other 5. Those other 5 lab reports are worth 20% of your final grade. There are 2 tests, and they are worth 15% of your final grade, so 7.5% each. And then the final exam is worth 40% of your final grade. The 6 assignments are available as PDF files on stream. The first one will be available at the same time as this first week's worth of, first section's worth of lessons go up, which is day 1 of semester. and you must submit them as a scanned PDF file, a single file. That says single page. I just realized now it should be single file. So it can be many pages, but a single file of a single PDF file. The other assignments will go up hopefully very soon throughout the next couple of weeks, so that you have access to all 6 assignments as you work through the course. I do recommend working through the assignment as you're going through the relevant lessons. So don't work through all 6 lessons and then print out the assignment and start having a look at it. Get the assignment first, and as you're working through the lessons, you can be checking the assignment to see which questions are relevant and hopefully using that to help your study as well. So I need to be able to answer this question, this lesson is talking about it. Make sure you get enough information out of the lesson to answer that assignment question. Obviously, you've got the problem sheets as well, so working through those, working through everything all together is my point. Don't do all the lessons and all the problem sheets and then come back to the assignment later on and realize you've missed something you need for the assignment. There are 2 tests. These are the scheduled dates here, 17th of December and 20th of January. They're online at-home tests. You can take the test anytime during that day. And as you'll see shortly, you are free to change that day if you want, but you do have to let me know in advance what day you would like to sit it on instead. There are 6 lab experiments. As I mentioned, the first one does not count. The other 5 count for 20%. Some of the experiments will include at-home experimental work that you do need to actually physically carry out. So whether it's measuring something or watching something and recording it versus some virtual and pre-recorded experiments which you'll access through Stream the same way you access everything else. So there is a mixture there. You do need to be prepared to do some at-home work. And finally, there is some mathematics that is required to do physics. Physics is absolutely a required tool for studying physics. I think I said physics twice. Maths is a required tool for studying physics. There is some that I will introduce and discuss as we go through the course, like in this first section, I will talk about vectors and unit conversions. Those are essentially just mathematics. But there is some that I expect you to already know, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, and that is rearranging equations. You should be able to do basic equation rearranging. You should be able to do basic trigonometry in the form of Pythagoras' theorem and the SOHCAHTOA set of equations. So look those up if you're not familiar with them, but you do need to be able to use those. And I also expect you to have some familiarity with graphs and just creating and interpreting simple graphs. Again, I will talk a little bit about graphs, I think in lesson 3 is where they first come up, but I do expect you to have some familiarity already with those graphs. Part 2, my lectures. So how are my lectures going to work? As per this one, they will be pre-recorded and uploaded to YouTube and then embedded into Stream. This allows you to watch them whenever you want, and you can go back to them if you need to double check something or re-watch it if you're not confident. You can also use YouTube's playback speed settings. So inside this window, if you watch right now, put your mouse over the window, you should see a little settings icon. If you click that, you should see playback speed. I think that's what it's called. And you can adjust the playback speed. So if I'm talking too quickly, you can slow me down to 0.75, or if I'm taking a bit long to get to the point, you can speed me up a little bit as well. Generally, my lectures are going to consist of a few different components. There is me talking directly into the camera, so that's when I really want to expand on something. I'll cut away from the slideshow, I'll go back to just this main view of me in the camera, and I'll talk to you directly. But most of the time, as per what I've been doing so far, I will be sharing my screen, showing you this lecture slide, and I'll be talking to that. So I'll essentially be narrating the lecture. But I will also occasionally have a document camera set up. I don't have it right now to jump over to show you, but I will have a document camera set up, which allows me to do some working on paper by hand, the same way you'd be doing it, and for you to watch me do that. And it just allows an extra bit of explanation for some of these problems and examples. Generally, my lectures are going to be around about 50 minutes, but some will be longer, some will be shorter, right? So don't get too discouraged if you see a lesson that's an hour 20 long, because it usually means there was one nearby that was, say, only 30 or 35 minutes. So they'll average around about 50 minutes, but they won't all be exactly that long. Your role as a student is to learn how you learn. That's not just for this course, that's for being a student in general, right? At high school, throughout a lot of educational programs, you generally get told, do this, do that, here's what you have to do, here's this task, here's that task. And to a certain extent, I have done that. I have created these lessons, I've created problem sheets, I'm gonna run Zoom tutorials, I'm gonna have tests and assignments, and I'm telling you to do all of these. But in reality, it's all on you. It's your job to figure out how you can absorb that material and how you can understand that material, and then to do that. Once you learn how you learn, you can figure out anything, right? So figuring out your own learning style is actually one of your main goals for university as a whole. Distance learning can be difficult. I do fully appreciate that. It's difficult for me as well, because in a face-to-face lecture, there's certain cues and information that I can get from students in the class, and I can adjust my discussion and my lecturing style accordingly. When I'm doing it this way, there's nothing for me to go off. I just have to record a video and hope that you find it useful, and certainly there's no feedback for me to do that. Feel free to send me some. If you do have feedback, feel free to send it to me, but there's no instantaneous feedback, so I can't adjust what I'm saying to a specific lecture slide based on your responses. What that means is that I tend to err on the side of over-explaining. So when I'm talking about something, I will tend to repeat that and go a little bit more in depth and say the same thing several times, as I have just done. Right? And that's my approach to trying to ensure that everybody understands and is on the same page with what I'm trying to convey. I realize it can seem a little tedious sometimes, especially when it's a concept that you already know or already understand, or that you just click with very quickly. But hopefully you'll also find it helpful when there's a concept that is difficult or that you're struggling with a little bit. Just the fact that I will repeat it and go over it and maybe say it a slightly different way. So hopefully helpful. I do apologize though if it does get a little tedious at times. I recommend, while you are watching these videos, to have a pen and paper. Right? Have something to write on. Don't just sit there watching it. Don't sit there with the headphones in, just watching that and ignoring everything else and not writing, not doing anything. You want to be engaged in more ways than just listening to me rattle on. You want to be writing things down. Now, don't write down what's already on the lecture slides. They are available to download from Stream. They are all PDF files. You can get the full color version, or you can get the black and white printable versions. Actually, they're not fully black and white. They just don't have the backgrounds or the colored headings, but they are more printer friendly. But don't write down the content of the lecture slides. That's already there. What you should be doing is writing down things that I say beyond what's on the slide that you think are interesting or will help you remember or understand it, or write down questions. If you have anything that you aren't sure about, anything you think of suddenly that you would normally stick your hand up in class and ask, write it down. Then when you come to a Zoom tutorial, or if you just want to email me, you can ask me those questions. Speaking of, please do ask questions. There's no easy way for me to keep you all on track. In a class, I can go around and I can check on people. I can walk up to someone doing a worksheet and see how they're going and ask them a few questions and just get a bit of a gauge for how everyone's moving along. That's not something I can do by distance. So it means that it really is up to you guys to keep yourselves on track. And the best way to do that is to ask me questions whenever you get stuck. A lot of people, they get slightly stuck on something and they just put it aside. They're like, I'll come back to that. Don't, right? Just flick me an email straight away. I'm happy to get hundreds of emails, right? Plenty of emails is good. It means you are all getting engaged and focusing on the coursework. Alternatively, as I said, post them on Stream. That's even better, because then other students can jump in and get involved in the discussion as well. So please do be proactive and just ask questions as soon as you're starting to be unsure about something, because if you leave it, then as we're going to see, you will struggle to build on top of that concept. And physics is very stepwise. You need to understand the first thing to build on it with the next thing. That's something I'll talk about in the first lesson, lesson 1 as opposed to 0. Finally, the personalized course plans. So I've already mentioned that the deadlines are flexible. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that in my initial Stream post and in the welcome video. All the deadlines are flexible. It's a summer course. We're all busy. We've all got other stuff on. It's Christmas. It's New Year's. We're going on holidays. We're going on trips. We've all got lots of things going on. So my deadlines are the default deadlines, and they will apply to you unless you send me a personalized course plan. So a personalized course plan is actually pretty straightforward. It is just a list of all your personal deadlines. I'll come back to that in a moment. Firstly though, regardless of whether you're using default or personalized course plan, sometimes something else comes up and you just need a quick extension for one specific assessment, and that's fine. Just email me before your deadline to let me know when you will submit it. You don't need to give me an excuse, a justification, anything. I don't care, right? I'm trusting you to prioritize and schedule your work accordingly. All I need to know is that you're not going to submit on time and what your new submission deadline is going to be. And you're free to choose any submission deadline. So if you think this is due on the 21st, I'm not going to get it finished, I'm going to instead aim to get it done on the 23rd, you just email me and say that. Just tell me you'll get it in on the 23rd. There are, however, late submission penalties. 10% per day or part day late. This does not count extensions. Extensions override any late submission penalty. This is only if you don't ask for an extension and then submit your assignment late. It is capped at 50%, and this applies to your own personal deadlines and to the default deadlines. Whatever your deadline is, you have to get the assignment in by then or ask for an extension, or you will be penalized. But as I said, all you need to do is send me an email to ask for an extension. So there really is no need for anyone to suffer any late penalties. Why do I bother having them then? It's to keep you all motivated and on track, hopefully, and keep me informed, right? Let me know when your submission date is going to be if you're not going to make it in by the official date. So that's the pure motivation of late submission penalties, is to try and keep you all in communication with me and let me know when you're going to be submitting things. That's it. That's the purpose. Massey University does guarantee work will be marked and returned within 15 working days, which is around about 3 weeks normally, but obviously it can vary over the summer period with holidays and things. For this course, I prefer to get marked work back to you as soon as I can. I endeavour to do so within 5 working days, so within a week of your submission. I can't guarantee that, but I do try to, just because getting that marked feedback is very useful for you to then attempt your next assignment or your next lab report, or indeed for the test to have the marked assignments for that relevant section back to work through those as part of your study for the test is very useful. So I will try and do it quicker. I can't guarantee it, but it is guaranteed within 15 working days. So as I said, coming back to the personalized course plan, it is just a list of your deadlines. That's all it is. So you've got 6 assignments, 6 lab reports, and 2 tests. You just need to tell me when you're going to submit each of them. That's all it is. There is a blank calendar on the stream side if you want to go and have a look at that and use that as a template to try and figure out when you're going to fit everything in. Do make sure you've got enough time to cover the required course material between assessments. So there are 6 lessons per assignment. Assignment 1 covers lessons 1 to 6, and then 7 to 12 are going to be in assignment 2. That means that if you set yourself a deadline for assignment 1, you need to make sure there's enough time to cover those next 6 lessons before your assignment 2 is due. Otherwise, you're going to find that you just don't have the time and you're not going to make that deadline that you've set yourself. So I do recommend creating a full course calendar, not just coming up with some dates for the deadlines, but actually figuring out when you're going to fit everything in. I also ask you not to put more than 1 assessment item on the same day if possible. It's not practicable for you to get through 2 assignments in 1 day, for example. You may decide that you want to do an assignment and a test on the same day. So you do assignment 1, then you do assignment 2, and then the test 1 covers the same material as assignments 1 and 2 did. So you may decide you want to do assignment 2 and then just do test 1 all in the 1 day while you've got it all fresh in your memory. That is fine. I do point you back to the idea that I can give you feedback on assignment 2 to then help you prepare for test 1 if you want to. You don't have to, but I do recommend that just so you can learn from any mistakes that you might make. In order for this course to be flexible, that's going to work best when I have all of the material available for you to access straight away. Indeed, the entire course should be available before we go on break at the end of 5 p.m. on the 23rd of December this year. That's when Massey shuts down for about 10 days. My goal is to have everything online and available before that date. It's not all ready right now. I am still recording some lessons, some lectures, getting some assignments and lab work finalized. So it is not all finished. So if you had intended to do the entire course in the first 4 or 5 weeks, You might find that you are going faster through the material than I am getting it finished and prepared and put online. But other than that, you should find that there's quite a bit of flexibility for you to do a little bit earlier than scheduled or a little bit later than scheduled in that default calendar. The other thing that you do need to schedule is the lab work. The assignments and the tests are pretty easy to schedule because you know exactly where they fit with the lessons. The lab work, they do state on the lab page which lessons each lab experiment relates to. So you do need to make sure you're up to that point. But you also need to make sure that you have access to some space to do the lab work in. So if you're traveling or you're in a hotel, you might not find that the lab work is terribly feasible. Some of it's fine, some of it you might find doesn't work too well. So I also recommend making sure that you have access to what you need. There are equipment lists on the stream page for the labs, but making sure that you are in a comfortable environment and can actually undertake this lab work when you schedule it. So for that reason, you may prefer not to do the labs evenly spaced throughout the semester. You may prefer to go and do them all in 1 week lump later on in the semester, maybe end of Jan or early Feb next year. You may decide to just sit down and do all 6 of those labs. If you're going to do that, again, that's fine. Just put that into your personalized course plan. Say, I'm going to do all 6 labs and I'm going to do them in these couple of weeks. Again, though, I do warn you, the same point I made about doing the test and the assignment in the same day. If you do that, that's all great, but I can't give you any feedback from your first one for you to then submit the next one because you haven't given me quite enough time. Whereas if you can space them out, even do 1 a week over the second half of the semester, then that'll just give me a bit more time to give you some feedback. Or perhaps do the first 1 early on in the semester, get feedback from that, and then you can do the other 5 as a block. So there's a lot of flexibility, but do keep in mind the idea of getting some feedback to improve on your work, because of course, if you're not improving, if you're not using the feedback to improve, then there's really no benefit in me providing that. So that's the end of this little lesson 0, this little recap. There are the review points. As I said, all my lectures will end with a review slide. I don't tend to read them out, but they are there just for you to look over and make sure you've grasped all the concepts. You can run back and have a look at those if you need to refresh yourself on any of those points. But that is the end of lesson 0, the recap of course admin. So hopefully by this point, you are happy with how the course is going to be run. As I said, there is a default calendar on Stream, which allocates certain days, certain tasks on certain days. And for day 1, it had just looking around the Stream site. And for day 2, it had this lesson 0. So that means that you've got a couple of days. The idea is that you don't just instantly know this, that you do spend a little bit of time looking around and just getting familiar with all of this. So that is the end of this first lesson. And I'll see you shortly for lesson 1.